Greetings, I'm Dr. Randy Cale. I want to welcome you to my toolkit for tough times. Here at Terrific Parenting, we're working vigorously to create a toolbox that will serve you with tools not just for this week and next, but for however long this lasts. So I want you to stay tuned for future videos. We'll have links to valuable documents and other websites where you'll find information that can help you get through these times. And these are tough times, right? It's no doubt extraordinary times. In a conversation with one of my clients we were having via a telehealth communication module, she was talking about how destabilized she felt. That's an interesting word, right? Destabilized, because many of us feel that. What causes that, of course, is that we are all accustomed to a pretty predictable life. A life where we're used to this, then this, then this, and then this. And tomorrow it's this, this, this. That predictability brings ease and comfort to us. It creates a sense of control of our lives. And so when all of that changes, which it has now, we feel destabilized. In fact, anxiety goes up. This is true for your kids. It's true for you. So one secret and one of the pieces of instruction that's critical to this whole series is that I want to teach you how to have stability again. And stability comes by having that sense of predictability. But you want to be able to do that with clarity about what to control and what not to control. Too often we end up in this role, particularly in these settings, and I've seen it now for a couple weeks, where we end up in this pattern that has now exacerbated, where we're constantly instructing and telling our kids what to do next, what to do next, what to do next. And so you want to stay tuned throughout this video series so you can get a sense of how to manage your kids without doing that, how to control the right things so that you aren't controlling of your children. And yet at the same time, we do want that predictable world, a predictable structure, because that brings ease to your kids. For many of you, you're accustomed to predictability in your daily routine, but it's sort of other directed, right? Your employer, your business, where you took the kids, a lot of things were predetermined and you just followed in. And that sort of structure brought a sense of predictability. Now all that, for many of you, has disappeared. And you may not be that good. You may not be an expert at self-control, at creating good structure, a predictable routine for yourself. And so that's going to be important. It's critically important for you, critically important for your kids. And we're going to talk more about that later. But in this world of unpredictability, of a loss of structure, we got to begin to see that there are other threats to your children's future, other threats to your future. And by threats, I don't mean a virus that you're going to get sick from, but I mean threats that have to do with one fundamental distinction. And that is, either during these times, the weeks, perhaps months ahead, you and your kids will get stronger or you'll get weaker. Very likely life leads you in this place where you can just kind of dog pedal and stay the same. My fear is these are ideal circumstances for many families to get weaker because they haven't developed that sort of self-discipline, not understanding how to control structure in their home, not having good self-discipline to put their own pattern or routine in place that's going to make me as a parent or you as a parent get stronger. Also here is the threat that in that looseness, we may begin to think that, oh, it doesn't matter that much. They got their work done, I'll just let them go. Well, for a lot of you, you have kids that are pretty bright. Schools may not be giving that much work because they're not used to this. So hour or two, they're done, and now you let them run. Well, the danger there, particularly as kids get older, they fight you a little harder, they make life miserable if you try to set limits. You eventually just say, okay, just let them all have their phone, let them have their computer, let them play video games, watch TV, whatever. this would be a major mistake. A major mistake. Because, as I alluded to, everything matters. Everything matters. And so it's all accumulating. Now, I don't want to be an extremist here. It's not that I'm saying an hour or two of TV or playing a video game or being on the phone. That's not the problem. The problem is hours upon hours accumulating day after day after day. That's a problem. And we know it to be a problem. It's not like this is Dr. Cale's opinion. The research is really, really clear on this. It is a threat. It changes the way the brain works. It changes the brain's capacity to focus, to put forth effort. Because in our neurofeedback clinic that we have at our office, we're able to actually watch. When you or your child watches TV and that goes on for a while, the natural tendency of an untrained brain is to produce more alpha wave patterns. And why is this important? Well, alpha is the brain wave of idling. The parts of the brain that should focus, solve problems, remember things. Oh, this is what's next. Or it's a 3-step problem. I go from this to this to this. Alpha sends everything into an idling pattern. And we know from good data that when we watch TV for hours on end, play video games, or just browse the computer, what happens is we kind of move with what comes at us, right? It's a good reason why we're idling. Whatever's feeding us information is controlling where our attention goes. Literally, it's controlling where our attention goes. And our brains, it goes past entertainment to what's called entrainment. Particularly, this is true for your children. It entrains us to the content that they're giving us. In this alpha wave pattern, we become idle, so we become less circumspect. Our discernment disappears. So we then create a sort of lazy brain that just follows along. And remember what I said earlier, we're getting weaker or stronger. Now, if we spend 10, 12 hours in a day getting stronger, and we spend a couple of hours watching TV, that's not a big deal. A couple hours playing a video game, not a big deal. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the tendency in these times to let kids, and even if we get laid off from work, turning on the news, watching too many shows. I mean, the Netflix volume has increased like tenfold in the last month. So you see, the majority of American families are reaching toward entertainment from the outside, and in the process, if not careful, this sort of lazy brain patterns inevitably going to unfold. And the difficulty is a week, not a big deal. 2 weeks, probably not a big deal. But if this goes on for months, and in many households, this has already been happening, kids having 5, 6 hours a day with digital content directing their attention, the difficulty is we add this over time, and that becomes a pattern in the brain that is much harder to change. It's a brain that doesn't want to focus, doesn't want to put forth effort, memory drops, performance drops. So we got to be careful about this. So part of the structure, part of the predictability needs to set limits and have controls on these electronic devices, because in reality, they are a threat to your children's future. And in reality, they're a threat to your sharp, good mind as well if it goes uncontrolled with no limits put in place. It just reminds me, I was recently visiting my mom in Virginia and was out to dinner, and the waitress was quite friendly, and we were chatting with her, and she mentioned that she had moved to this very small town in Virginia that I grew up in, Stanton, Virginia, because there was an unschooling movement there. And I thought, well, that was interesting. So I'm looking it up, of course. What is unschooling? And it's a movement where parents are promoted to believe in an idea where kids need no structure. They need to decide what's good for them and what they want to do during the course of a school day. And so you feed their interest. Now, there's certainly a group of kids that are motivated, driven. They're sort of anomalies. They They want to learn, they want to grow of their own accord from very early on. That's great, these kind of unstructured programs when you have those kids. But that's not most kids. Most kids, if you give them what they want, they will want what's easy. They will want what's entertaining. They will not want what's growth producing. And so this important dichotomy emerges as you look at your children, as you look at their time, as you think about your time at home with them. A dichotomy between what's growth producing versus what's entertaining and anxiety relieving. What's easeful. And over time, they're probably going to choose what's easeful, what's anxiety relieving, what brings them comfort, versus what's going to make them grow, what's going to require effort. We want to always have a structure that supports a dominant focus on activity that produces growth, with certainly ample room to have some anxiety relieving, relaxing, enjoying, entertaining time. We want to balance there, but we want a dominance on growth, not a dominance on what's enjoyable or easeful. Now that's great for vacations, weekends, perhaps, but still we got to be clear. And when you keep this important distinction in mind, what's happening now? Is it growth producing? Is it making them stronger? By the way, look at it for me, for you, for us as adults, we've got to be thinking, is this making me stronger? Am I getting stronger? Does this serve me? Does this serve our family? Does this serve our children? Versus, oh, does it relieve my anxiety? Does it make me feel better? Does it somehow create the sense that I'm more in control of things when really we're not in control of things, other than what's happening in your home. But what's happening out there, we don't have much control over that. So anxiety relieving, easeful, give me a sense of control, or is it making me stronger? Is it serving me? Are we getting better? Please keep that in mind. So the bottom line here is this. We don't give kids what they want. Whether they scream, tantrum, yell, or make your life miserable, we don't give them what they want. We give them what's good for them. We give them what's growth producing for their body, for their mind, for their life, for self-discipline. We don't give them what they want. They're going to want simple carbohydrates. They're going to want to watch videos, play video games, be on social media all day. They're going to want to stay up all night, many kids, not all kids. But they're going to tend to want the things that move toward an easeful life, where there's no effort, where they don't have to grow, get stronger. So if we just let them do what they want, the accumulated impact over time is disastrous. So please, give them what they need. Give them what makes them grow. Give them what brings strength. And you'll have more pointers to that in a few moments. But essentially, we got to be able to say no and deal with the consequences and know how to deal with the consequences of that. Because many of you, if you've been letting kids decide on their own how many hours they should be on a device, you're going to see when you say no and start setting limits, it'll be pretty ugly. And by the way, just a side point on this, where the herd is going, I wouldn't trust that. The herd is sort of following the herd, and the guidelines do not line up with what makes sense for an evolving brain. So when you see that most parents are letting their 12-year-olds play Call of Duty and doing that for 4 or 5 hours a day, that makes no sense. It just doesn't make sense. When a 12-year-old has an iPhone and is on social media from the time they get home from school, not now, but from the time they get home from school to go to bed, that doesn't make sense. For kids to be on a computer where when you walk by, suddenly you see a couple buttons, and then it looks like they're doing their homework, and you walk away and you're suspicious, well, you probably should be. Because if their homework's taking 4 or 5 hours, they're not doing homework. They're doing other things. So we've got to be clear. Setting limits is critically important. and you've got to be willing to do that, and there will be some grief. There will be some ugliness. That you want to learn to deal with. We'll talk about that on the next sequence in this video. Final point for you, and this is probably the most important point of this entire video, and it will lead into some details that follow up in the next video. But it's this. There's one thing in psychology, probably there's one thing sort of almost in the world that you could say, is there a principle by which organisms learn to move in a particular direction? Even we could say, what causes an organism to grow in a particular direction, to move in a particular direction, including humans? We could capture it in one simple statement, and it would be this: that whatever you focus upon expands. Whatever you give energy to, it grows. Now, the it can be almost anything. You know, it could be a plant that you give attention to. It grows, obviously. An animal that you give attention to, it grows. Child, you give attention to. But how do you give attention? When do you give attention? The it, as it comes to our children and as it relates to our own brain, that it is critically important, because the it is that specific moment. So for now, as we think about, let's just talk about your brain. Let's talk about your happiness. Let's talk about your level of anxiety or stress. You notice how easy in the last several weeks in particular, it is to focus on things that bring you fear or worry or concern or angst. It could be things that you don't like. You've judged them. I don't like this. I don't want this. I don't agree with this. I don't want my kids to do that, yet they keep doing that. I want you to do that, and they keep doing it. I don't want you to do that. You might notice, and if you're being very, very truthful, just make a column and write down what you spoke to, what you thought about, what you focused on with your children. What were your comments? How many times did you say that or that or that? When you're watching an update on the virus, how often did you share it? Do you find yourself talking to somebody else about it? Do you find yourself going to the kitchen and thinking about it? Because if you notice, the tendency in times of fear is that the state of fear is like a magnet, right? Our emotions are like magnets. And so we have this brain that's kind of tilted to be concerned about fear. So what do? We end up thinking about it, talking about it, sharing, watching more, learning more. And this question of, wait a minute, how much of this really serves you? And by the way, it serves you when it brings you to take intelligent action. That's how you know it serves you. Or it brings you decided ease or calm. That would be reasonable. But most of the guidelines, what you should do, what you are doing, most of you, to keep your children, your family safe, the guidelines are clear. It's out there, we know that. The rest of what's happening in the world, most of that is interesting. And if it were just interesting, that would be great. But it's not just interesting. It scares us. And if you find the content you're consuming brings more angst, brings more fear, brings more worry, has you thinking about this more, I suggest you set limits, because fear breeds fear. You want to be intelligent and wise. You want to know what actions to take. Beyond that, the rest of this mostly serves to make us anxious, worried, and then bring that state into our homes, into our critical relationships, into the workplace, whether we're on Zoom or whether we're actually part of those essential businesses still showing up at work. Fear does not serve you, does not serve your kids, does not serve us. Awareness, accurate information, and knowing what intelligent action to take, that serves you. It serves your children. Do that, and once you've got that done, shut the rest of it down. Limit yourself to a 5-minute New York Times review or some review of what's happening in the world. And shut the rest of it down because it just doesn't serve. And we want to do what serves you. We want to do what serves your kids. Now, this critical law, this principle that what you focus on expands, you'll see how quickly this works in your own mind. Because one option is to focus on gratitude during these tough times. I find most people say to me, I can't do that. When I have telehealth sessions with my clients, they're going, oh, it's hard to focus because they haven't shut down their access and how much this fear-invoking content has consumed their life. But in order to be grateful, in order to see how blessed we are, in order to see how in reality this threat is being managed pretty well, and those at risk are clearly delineated and should be kept, as we all know, quarantined and not exposed. And there's still a few tough weeks ahead, but we will get through this. You'll get through this. We'll get through it. Our country will get through this. We will get through it. To be strong, and that's your secret, to be strong during these times. Because if in your mind you're saying to yourself, be strong, imagine just be strong is your mantra. Be strong and be kind. Be strong, be kind. If that's your mantra, you find that you have very little interest in what weakens you, what makes you fearful and scared. Because you can be strong, wise, cautious, do everything you need to do to protect and keep your family safe. But you don't need to focus on this fear. There's a second level where this principle comes to play in what's emerging in your home, and probably for many of you has been emerging for a long, long time. And that has to do with what in your home on a day-to-day basis gets your attention. Because you'll see how true this law is, because I've never found it. Maybe you'll send me an example where this isn't true, but I've never found this principle to be broken, let's say. Because if I look at the problem behaviors, the problem moments with your kids, maybe even in relationship with spouse, but mostly let's talk about kids. If you were to make a list of the 10 most difficult moments you had with your kids, and for many of you, these difficult moments are escalating, you would see that over and over again, these problem moments keep getting your attention and energy. So remember the law, remember the principle. If you engage it, it must grow. If you engage it, it must grow. So if it is whining, whining grows. If it is looking out the window when they're supposed to be doing their homework and you keep redirecting, and you're doing that 100 times a day, looking out the window grows. That's the way it works. If it's complaining and nagging you and you keep saying, stop that, don't do that, stop that, leave me alone, it grows. The law applies everywhere. If you give attention and energy, it must expand. The it is whatever gets attention and energy. So of course, I'm referring to your children, but the it in the moment is what is that specific behavior? What's that moment? So you see, for most of you, if misery making is growing in your home, you see that it's probably because lots of energy is devoted to moments that you don't want, don't like, don't agree with, want to get rid of, want your kids to change, want to be better, but you keep talking to it. You keep engaging it, thinking that if you give your energy to what you don't want, you'll end up with what you do want. It doesn't work that way. So you got to change your mindset. And we're going to talk a lot about this on the next video. But first, I'm covering the basis of where this principle applies. Because it applies with your kids. If you engage it, whatever you focus on expands, right? You give energy and attention, it grows. in your own mind. If you give attention and energy to fear, to worry, anxiety, that grows. Now, granted, thoughts are going to show up. You don't choose what thoughts show up. A lot of us think we do. It's an illusion. Because if you did, everybody would choose awesome thoughts, right? We just choose the most amazing thoughts. Now, we can do that with a moment of intentionality. So this is a pointer, of course, to deep personal change. Intentions where we seize a moment to focus a certain way, to think a certain way. That's part of it. The other part is to be really clear about what you're not interested in, what you're not going to engage, what worrisome thoughts, what fearful thoughts, the relatives who want to send you the latest fear-inducing news release. Resist it all. Stop. Control what gets in up here, because if it gets your attention repeatedly, it grows. And you just have to decide, do I want to live in that world? And some of you might want to, it's okay. But for me, I want to live in a world that rocks with happiness, with enthusiasm, with passion, with energy, with growth. And to do that, I have to stay aware. So I don't pretend that there's not a problem in the world. I stay aware, but I keep it so that I'm intelligently aware enough to take appropriate action. But I'm not going to spend more than a few percentage points of my day on that. The rest of it's going to be devoted to what I'm interested in, what I want to engage, where I want to make a difference. And this is your secret and secret with the kids. So I'm going to wrap up this video now by emphasizing whatever you repeatedly engage in the world or in here with your kids, with your spouse, with your friends, with your family. If you keep giving it attention, it keeps expanding. Sort of like water to a seed. So if you water a seed, it doesn't suddenly spurt right in front of you, right? But you keep watering, you keep watering, you keep watering, you see that the roots of this are being fed. Same thing with a plant, same thing with a problem behavior, same thing with a thought. So when you stop giving energy to that, the whole world doesn't immediately change. We have to get to those roots, so it takes a while. So just be clear. Stop, stop, stop. Stop investing your sacred life energy in what brings fear. Stop investing your sacred life energy in what you don't want, don't like, don't agree with in your home. Be strong. Be strong. Be love. Be strong. Be kind. Be strong. This is the mantra for these times. This is the mantra for our lives. This is the mantra that if you keep this in your mind, be kind, be strong, be love, be strong. You'll find that that mantra, that just keeping that alive within you has power to keep you focused on what you really value and what's true. Thank you for taking the time to go through this. Next, we're going to talk about how to bring that one principle into a set of actions that can change your children's behavior and the way they treat you at home. We'll then have a separate video talking about structure and how do you manage structure to create that predictability with ease. And then briefly we'll talk about consequences and the role of consequences. But you're going to see that all of these principles become more important to the extent that we honor what I talked about early on, which is we got to set limits on that lazy brain inducing stuff, the electronics, the passive consumption of entertainment. We've got to set limits if we want a healthy, strong, growing brain. Okay, that's it for now. Hope you stay tuned. I appreciate your time and effort. If you like this, please let people know. I greatly appreciate it. This is Dr. Randy Cale. I'll see you soon. Take care.